Hope you're all having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2524. Oh, we're getting up there. Today's topic is, where was your family when you started your first job? Wow, that's going back a ways. When I came up with this question, I was like, when did I start my first job? And I was like, was it babysitting or a paper run? It was one of the two, because I had a friend who did a paper route and she was going to be going away on vacation, and I happened to be staying at home over that vacation time she was away. And so she taught me her paper route and I did it for her. But then I was also babysitting, but I don't think I started the babysitting until we got to Waitara, which meant I would have been 11 when I got up there. And I babysat the kids next door with my first babysitting job. And I probably was like 12 maybe, but I can't remember where the paper route came in about that. I know I also did a stint in tea rooms in New Zealand where we were making the sandwiches and the filled rolls and serving the tea and the coffee and making milkshakes and ice creams and selling candy and all that sort of stuff, from the loose lollies to the candy bars. That was pretty cool. So it was kind of like waitressing. And then after that, I was a gas pump jockey at a local petrol station, gas station. Those are my, and then I was coaching gymnastics from the age of 13 through to when I left for the Air Force, and then beyond that as well. Even after I joined the Air Force, I was still coaching gymnastics. So I've had a variety of jobs before I even joined the Royal New Zealand Air Force, which was in 1st of May 1984. And so that was just some of my jobs. But starting your first, and oh yeah, I still got my jersey on. So this is my jersey. I got to tell you, this jersey has history. So this jersey I made, and I actually knitted it. Got the kit came with the pattern and the yarn, and it's 100% wool, so it's nice and cozy and snuggy. And it needs to be snuggy because it's like 50-something degrees outside right now. It started off at lower than that this morning. I think it was 1 degree Celsius when I got up this morning to get onto the chat, and that was when I got up at 5 o'clock this morning. It was like 1 degree outside Celsius. So I pulled this out and put on because it's it doesn't get me itchy around the collar here. But I made this. You can't quite see the whole thing of it. Oh, let's see if we can stand up and so you can see the whole thing. It actually comes down to mid thigh, which you can't see. But I made this back in 1996, and I wore it the first time I met Brad in person. We've been chatting online, and the first time I met him in person, I was wearing it because it was cold. So this thing has history. So 1996, that's what, 30 years ago? 96, 30 years ago. Wow, I must have made it before then. Might have been 95 I made it, because I thought it was over 30. Yeah, but it's still got a lot of wear and tear still in it. There's no moth-eaten bits in it. It's done me well. Enjoyed wearing it when I was living in Virginia when it was a cold, snowy day outside. But anyway, back to first jobs. So there's a little bit of personal history there on that one. So starting your first job is a milestone that many people never forget. Do you remember what your first job was? How much did you get paid? It was often the first taste of independence, responsibility, earning your own money. Yes. I guess you could put in household chores as well, because we got paid an pocket money or an allowance each week, but we had chores that we had to do as well in order to earn that. So I guess that's kind of like your first job, isn't it? With mum and dad giving you your allowance based on the jobs that you did. Whether it was delivering newspapers, working on a farm, helping in a family business, serving in a cafe, stacking shelves, working behind a shop counter, pumping gas. That first job taught you babysitting. That first job taught you lessons that lasted a lifetime. For many families, the first pay packet was a proud moment. It might have helped pay for driving lessons, saving towards your first car, contributing to the household. You bought something that you had dreamed of for months. It could be buying your first gift for somebody from your first paycheck. It wasn't just about the money. It was about taking the first step into adulthood. Now, it depends on what age you were as well, because we lived in most of the place we lived were near farming communities as well. So you had kids coming in that lived on farms. but they quite often had, when they got home from school, had to go and do chores on the farm or get up early before catching the school bus to do some chores on the farm as well. So they started a little younger, but they may not have got paid for it. They may have got an allowance, but they chipped in with the family and got stuff done there as well. But looking back through your family history, you'll often find that a first job led to much bigger opportunities. It introduced lifelong friends, inspired careers, opened unexpected doors, or even led to meeting a future husband or a wife. Sometimes one opportunity changed the direction of an entire family story. These memories are just as important as birth certificates and census records. You can even look at census records to see what was their occupation. And did they have that same occupation 10 years later, 20 years later? They help future generations understand the lives their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents lived, the challenges they faced, and the dreams they had worked so hard to achieve. And your family tree challenge today is ask a family member about their first job. How old were they? What was the first job? What was the job? Oh, I can tell you when one of my first... Oh, no, I was still living in Whiteshire at the time. Sorry, back on track. What was their first job? Who was their first boss? What did they earn? And what did they spend their first pay packet on? Most importantly, ask what they learned from their experience and whether it changed the direction of their life. Record their story today because tomorrow it becomes part of your family's history. Let us know about your first job in the comments below. So yeah, I was 10 or 11 when I got my first job. I was trying to think, didn't have any in Fielding, and we moved to Waitara. That's where I had my first babysitting job, and I did the paper route. Those were my first two jobs. I don't remember the order they were done in, but I was about 11 or 12. Actually, I think I was in high school when I did the paper route. Yeah, because I was doing the paper route while still attending school because this person was away for a couple of weeks. And following her around on my bike was interesting because I had to follow her around and remember which houses got newspapers and which ones doesn't. And on my first time by myself after she'd left, I rode past this house. This woman leaned out the window and screamed, "You forgot my paper!" That was my very first one. Never forgot her house again after that. But then I always got more papers than I needed, so I ended up with a stack of newspapers at home, which was fine. Mum and Dad got to read the newspaper for free for a couple of weeks. Yeah, what was your first job? What do you remember your first job being? I know I started coaching gymnastics when I was 13. My first babysitting job I was probably about 12 because it was the kids next door. And then that was the other job I had. I'd totally forgotten about that one. So the people next door were horticulturalists, and they had all of these kiwi fruit vine cuttings that they were going to sprout and grow, meaning that we had to stand there with these and they were big, like an apple-sized box. And we had to stand there and we had to graft the bottom of so you'd get so I don't draw myself. You'd get the length of vine, and you would take a knife and you would cut these like 3 or 4 marks on the bottom of them. You do a diagonal cut, and then you would dip it into this hormonal powder, and then would put them into the box, and then these boxes were later taken out to the different farms and stuff, where they were then buried into the ground with the hormone powder side down, and they started growing the kiwi fruit vines that way. We did thousands of those in their garage, and this is the next door neighbor I used to babysit for as well. We did thousands of those. We got paid per vine. So if we had a box, there was a set price for a box. And I was one of the employees. They had a whole bunch of other high school students that would come in and just work in the garage and just do all of this for them. And we would work like about 2 or 3 hours, and she'd bring us down refreshments, hot drinks, cold drinks, and some homemade biscuits. Yeah. Or cookies for the Americans. Totally forgot about that one. That one just popped into my head. And like I'm thinking back to all those times that I wrote out, like for B&I, I had to write out, what the previous jobs you had, and mine just was like about this long. And that one's not on there. But yeah, I got a lot of job opportunities once I became a teenager. Got lots of job opportunities and things to do. So yeah, I did buy my first bike. And then when I got my first bike, I was insistent. Somebody had to go to the airport, and Dad was going to meet us. He had his patrol car, and Mum was driving out my brothers. One of my brothers was going on a flight or something, and so I insisted I was going to ride my bike. I just got my very first 10 speed. My bike before that had 1 speed, But I had this 10-speed. It's going to help me go up hills. I didn't know how it was going to do that. It was going to go up the hills. And I remember riding this bike then, getting to the airport, and like, I am not riding this bike. My legs were sore. My butt was sore. My parents had told me that's a long distance, but I was insistent that I was going to ride my brand new 10-speed bike. I don't even think I'd had it a week. I'd only had it like a couple of days or something, to the airport. And so my parents were like, okay, you ride it out there, you ride it home. I'm like, okay. So we get there and I'm like, can we put the bike in the car? They're like, no, you want to do this, you ride home. So I was so mad. And I'm cycling along the road that leads to off the main road that leads to the airport. And my dad goes past his patrol car and slows down and says, I said, can you please take me home? He's like, no, I can't. I got to get back to work. He says, but you'll be fine. He says, just take your time. And I remember stopping at friends of ours' places at the top of Big Jim's Hill. And they had a house up there. So I stopped there and asked for some water because I didn't have a water bottle with me. Didn't even have a water bottle holder on my 10-speed. This was back, what would I have been? This was back in the early 80s. And then I took these back roads. Like I decided I'm not going to go down Big Jim's Hill on the main road. I'm going to take these back roads. And it took me hours to get home. It took me like 2 or 3 hours to get home. And my mum was sort of like, where have you been? I said, well, I stopped off at the Joneses' place and got some water. And then I went this way home through these back roads and stuff. Then, of course, I had a big hill to go up on the others. Once I got across the river, I had this big hill to go up to get to our place. That was the last hill I had to ride up, thank goodness for that. Everything else was downhill to that point, and then I had this big hill to get up to. And went past the marae and past the high school, and then I could get into our street. And depending which end of the street I went into, because we had street was ended. One ended in front of the high school. The other one was down by the cemetery. We had the cemetery over our back fence. Great place to go and hang out when you're a teenager. Trust me, it's a great. I'd still like doing it today. Almost 60, and I still like going and sitting in cemeteries and just wandering and sitting, contemplating, laying down on the ground. We used to do that as kids. There's this one area in the cemetery that was just a slight hill. And it was close to where the infant and toddlers were buried. They had this whole infant children's section there. And there was just this piece of grass that they didn't put any plots on, but you could lay there and there was just like sky, the Milky Way directly above you at night. The Milky Way was directly above you at night. And we would just, and us kids, and there was a group of us kids from high school that would just go there, would lay down on this hill together and would just lay there and talk, and we'd point out shapes in the stars. And other times we wouldn't say anything. We'd just lay there and do nothing. But it was just a really cool place to go and hang out, and we weren't disturbing anybody. Nobody was disturbing us. And we just looked up at the stars and made shapes out of the stars and just talked like teenagers do. So, but yeah, that was all between those jobs and stuff that I had. So, yeah. Oh, and then I cleaned house. Who was it? She was a friend of Mum and Dad's, I think. I know that he was a teacher at the high school, but it wasn't through that connection. His connection was through his wife with my mum. And so once a week I would cycle over to her house and clean their house for them. They just wanted their bedroom done, the kitchen, the bathroom. Didn't want the kids' rooms done or anything like that. So there was just a certain parts of the house I had to clean for them every week or every 2 weeks. So, I kept busy as a teenager, not just doing the school stuff, but also having after school work, keeping up with my school work and all that as well. So with that, okay, so what did I tell you your task was today? Your task is in the comments below. Let us know let us know about your first job in the comments below. And your challenge is to ask a family member about their first job. How old were they? What was the job? Who was their first boss? What did they earn? And what did they spend their first paycheck on? And most importantly, ask what they learned from that experience and whether it changed the direction of their life. Record their story today, because tomorrow it becomes part of your family's history. With that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we will catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hang on, let me double check that. Yes. Actually, I might go on earlier tomorrow. Yeah, I will be. I'll be on at regular time tomorrow. Okay. So we'll catch you guys at 6 p.m.